Hi friends, I'm Larissa Evans, and this is actually my first video that I'm posting on my channel, so I kind of feel like this tiny hopeful thing, sort of like offering myself up into the ether, if you will. Going into 2022, I am looking for just new avenues of expression and connection, and I love learning and collaborating with different people, and social media seems like such an important opportunity, living in this age where we really, many of us, not all of us, but many of us have the ability to connect all across the world, and that feels really special, and it also feels like a great responsibility. And so for me, I'm really wanting to focus on being mindful in how I consume social media and also how I express myself on social media. So tonight, it is like around midnight, like shortly after midnight on December 24th, so Christmas Eve. And I am thinking about Jesus. My whole life, I've been fascinated by the mystery of Jesus and have sought different avenues of learning about him. And that's ebbed and flowed, right? There were years that I explored more, and I especially will dive in around Christmas, And so last time I did a deeper dive was in 2016. And at the time, my son Crew was 1, and he's 6 now. So it's been a little while. At that time, I was chiefly reading Zealot by Reza Aslan, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name completely correctly. So I enjoyed that, and I also caught a few random documentaries that were on right around Christmas that I wasn't really sure if I could trust how they sourced their information. They were entertaining and interesting. And this year, this Christmas season, I find myself with more time than I had anticipated, and so I'm back swimming in Jesus, if you will. And this year I'm getting a little bit back into Zealot, and I'm a slow reader. You guys, I'm such a slow reader. It's ridiculous. And the other thing that I found, I think at like Whole Foods, was this Life reissue of a special edition on Jesus, and it spoke to me. In fact, this might have been actually what I saw, and what like pulled me in was this. And I was like, I think it's time, for me to dive back into Jesus. And so I've started it on this, and I have to, the way I read is when I encounter something that I don't know, I tend to want to find out more about it. And so I'm like constantly going back and forth between my material and the internet. And then I'm rereading again, fluidly this time, with a new sense of what it all means. And so I'm just a snail. I'm a snail in so many ways, and also in how I read. The third material that I'm sourcing this year is really special to me, and it is called Incarnation and Reincarnation by E.V. Ingraham, and it was published in 1930. And what's great about this is it's an obscure text. I found it at my local antique bookshop, and I was excited about it. I leafed through it a little bit, and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I went downstairs to buy it along with my other stuff, and the guy there and I like usually get to chatting, and it's funny, we usually get to chatting about dreams, which is a whole another video for another day. I really believe in the power of our dreams and in sharing dreams with each other, especially in dream groups. But anyway, like this guy and I do talk about dreams whenever I walk in there randomly. But he was like, "Oh, you're the one who ended up with that book." And I was like, "Oh, what do you mean?" And he's like, "We just found that book in the warehouse." And we were like, "Wow, like who's gonna get this one? This one's super cool." Like, it is super cool, and I feel so blessed that I have apparently come in here at just the right time to stumble upon this little gem. And so I'm going to share with you guys, I'm going to share out a couple passages from this book since it is so obscure. And there is actually a whole section in here on the resurrection, which is fascinating, and I'm digesting that still. Like, he has some really interesting ideas about resurrection, about Jesus and Jesus's resurrection, and about the way Jesus lived his life. So that I'm still digesting, but there's a couple passages right in the beginning that I wanted to share. And this little book has 4 parts. Part 1 is Incarnation and Reincarnation, title of the book. Part 2, The Carnal and Spiritual Minds. Part 3, The Hidden Law of Demonstration. And Part 4, Prayer, Its Practice, and Its Answer. Now, apparently, I am partway into Part 3, The Hidden Law of Demonstration, across the last 2 or 3, two. Oh, it hasn't been more than 2 years since I've owned this book. And I don't remember. And so that's the other thing I do. I go back and I reread and I reread and I reread to fully absorb important things. So let's get into this. And on the very first page of this book, he says, "It is not necessary that one believe in reincarnation. It is for the consideration only of those who are ready for it. Whatever we believe or disbelieve has little to do with the facts. For the facts of life remain the same, regardless of our beliefs. Once the idea was held that the world was flat. But while that belief prevailed, the world was quite as round as it is today. Therefore, the facts regarding reincarnation are the same, one way or another, regardless of our belief in the matter." Okay, so then about a page later, he says, "We are not writing this with the idea of arousing any belief for or against the idea. We are hopeful only that we may stimulate you to open-minded thinking. Let us not be afraid to face life and to dare discover it as it is, regardless of our prejudices and our beliefs. Life is not for the perpetuation of beliefs. Life is for growth and the increase of knowledge." Word. So how does that speak to me of Jesus? Truth. I am seeking the truth about Jesus. And as I've been, even just this year, reading these 3 texts, this one has more ideas than history and facts and history. It has some of that, but it has more concepts. These 2 gems are, they're great too. They have more history. They're more history-based and more fact-based, right? And that's great too. Both and, right? However, I'm finding this sort of unsettled feeling about the New Testament as we know it, and as the Gospels that were included in there, and then these so-called Gnostic texts, which I had kind of heard about, but and partly in Zealot, he sort of mentions that he doesn't really call upon them or something. I should read that, but I'm not going to look for it right now, so don't quote me on that. And then here they talk about him, and I'm like, well, wait, I gotta go figure this out. And I don't know how valid like my source was. I think it was PBS. But I'm like, okay, so these Gnostic texts were found in 1945 on the Nile, and maybe because it hasn't been that long ago, but why aren't these stories like more integrated? Because this is all new information in these Gnostic texts about Jesus and his life and some of the things that he said. And then so supposedly, and don't quote me on this because I'm still learning this, supposedly the Gnostic texts were like Coptic translations of older Greek records. And so I don't know much more than that, but that's what I think I know. So where was I? I'm seeking the truth about Jesus. And I know that as stories spread, misinformation can be rampant. And it is up to all of us to seek the truth and to not tolerate or accept falsity. And now I'm feeling like I don't know where I was going to go after that because I'm getting fired up. I think it's just that I'm seeking the truth about Jesus. Hold on. I like wrote notes as I was just looking at these texts today. Oh yes, that's right. There's a continuum, right? Like there's a continuum between truth and falsity. So that felt important. Also, I personally believe that Jesus existed. What other notes did I write? Oh yeah, I wrote, that's right. I wrote, the way that I imagine Jesus is that he was so radically mindful that people were either drawn to him or they were threatened by him, right? That's how I feel of it. And it's late and I've been like in holiday madness, so I'm like forgetting what my notes, like what my thoughts were today. I guess just like to some degree or another that when people are so radical like that, people are either drawn into them or they're threatened by them. And that feels important. And Jesus was a prophet, right? And this text talks a lot about prophecy. And what were my other notes about prophecy? Oh yeah, like what I think that means. To me, that means somebody who is fully engaged in the wider collective consciousness. And so that is the same as being super, super mindful. It's a very deep listening, looking and listening to the external world and the internal world. I believe we all can be prophets. We live our way into that. Step by step, lifetime by lifetime, in relationship. And I personally don't believe that there's one person who is going to deliver our world into peace and joy. We are all doing that work together, in connection. Taking ourselves from disconnection and distress to connection and joy, and from there to discovery and exploration, which is just so exciting. And again, goes back to the seeking of knowledge, the seeking of truth and the seeking of knowledge and growth. that's all for tonight. Bye, friends.